Want to get to our other big story tonight. This increasing number of women turning to midwife services and births outside of the hospital. But an Arizona home birth tragedy where both mom and baby died, raising new concerns about safety, training, and oversight.
After hearing from this grieving family what they wish they knew before choosing their midwife, ABC 15 senior investigator Melissa Blasius has been compiling information to make it even easier for expectant moms to decide what's best for them and their babies.
ABC 15 set out to do something that's never been done before. We created an interactive database online with details of the credentials and disciplinary records for all of Arizona's 400+ midwives who have active licenses. Throughout this story, you can click on the QR code on your screen for a direct link. You're about to see why this is so important.
This has been the hardest thing I've ever had to live through.
Joey Harrelson's daughter and grandson both died last December after a home birth gone wrong.
And I'm a pretty strong person, but this has torn our family apart.
Her daughter, Jordan Terry, hired midwife Sarah Kankowitz based on recommendations from other new moms. Joey said Jordan and her family did not know that state regulators had found deficiencies in the care that Kankowitz provided during 2 other births, and she had also received 5 fines for failing to turn in reports on time. This wasn't the first bad outcome.
Yes. After the fact, family started researching. What I've learned is that so many violations, so many citations.
3 years before Jordan Terry and her baby Mac died, Heather Flowers hired the same midwife.
And I really trusted that she had my health, my safety that's what she was there to monitor. All these red flags were ignored.
According to state records, Kankowitz did not check vital signs as often as required during a lengthy labor. And when baby Karina, who was 11 pounds, was born, Heather said she was purple and not responsive at first. Luckily, she was revived. And when it came to caring for the mom, the state's report said Kankowitz violated the rules when she did not seek consultation for a severe laceration, a tear Heather developed when delivering such a big baby.
Every day of my life, I have a consequence from the tear. Every single day. There has not been one day in the last 4 years that have gone by that I have not suffered.
Heather wanted to warn others about the midwife, but said it was hard to figure out the process.
I wasn't going to give up, making sure the report finished and was complete. So it took a lot. It took quite a long time.
Heather filed her complaint with the Arizona Department of Health Services. ADHS licenses nearly 100 midwives, and the same group of regulators also supervises funeral homes, audiologists, laser techs, and several other health professions and facilities.
I couldn't believe it. I thought to myself, how are these people going to address this issue or even understand what actually happened here?
Adding to the confusion, Arizona has 2 classes of midwives licensed by 2 separate agencies. There are more than 300 certified nurse midwives who have advanced medical degrees and are licensed under the state's nursing board. They also can use more medication and more medical interventions than midwives licensed through ADHS like Kankowitz was. This ADHS group just needs a high school diploma, no formal medical training, as long as they pass a written knowledge test and get third-party certification from a credentialing group that requires an apprenticeship-type program.
I wasn't aware of the certified midwife versus a licensed midwife, lay midwives. I really didn't delve into that. I trusted, that she would be safe regardless because this person is saying that they're professional.
What would you tell a young woman anywhere if they're kind of like, oh, this looks so idyllic?
Try not to be sold on a fantasy. Ask more questions.
It was detrimental to the health and safety of the mother and child.
So they're trying to revoke her license?
They suspended her for 6 months.
To help families answer their questions, ABC 15 spent days sorting through hundreds of licensing records from both ADHS and the Board of Nursing, creating a first-of-its-kind database in Arizona. On abc15.com, you can see the names of all Arizona midwives with active licenses, their regulatory agency, their type of license, and how long they've been practicing in Arizona. You can search by name and click links to their disciplinary records.
You can see whether they've had any fines, any violations, any deficiencies, any suspensions, any revocations.
That's excellent. Yeah, having it all in one area would be very beneficial to moms.
Longtime midwives tell ABC 15 most of their colleagues do an excellent job in providing patient-centered care and natural childbirth while following state health and safety regulations.
And having an excellent skilled provider at your birth increases the safety tenfold. So I think that doing your due diligence, if this is something that you want and want to pursue, that you absolutely should do your homework.
Sarah Kankowitz no longer has a license to practice midwifery in our state. As for Jordan and baby Mac's family, they're still coping with their loss, but they're also focusing on what we can do as a community to prevent future birth tragedies. We at ABC 15 hope this database can lower a hurdle to finding quality care.
I appreciate all that you guys have done. Just get the word out, and our biggest thing is awareness.
While making this database, we looked closely at the past 3 years, finding ADHS took regulatory enforcement action against more midwives than the Arizona State Board of Nursing did. But some of that has to do with different oversight rules. 2 ADHS licensed midwives, including Kankowitz, surrendered their licenses as they faced potential revocation. 4 more ADHS licensed midwives were issued suspensions. ADHS also gave 3 midwives statements of deficiency, which list violations of state health rules and seek corrective action. Finally, ADHS fined 1/3 of all their midwives, 33 of them, in the last 3 years for failing to turn in required midwife reports. Those reports must be submitted within 30 days of completing care for each client. Now, the State Nursing Board does not require such client reports from its certified nurse midwives. On their side, the only discipline in the last 3 years was license suspensions for 2 nurse midwives. I'm senior investigator Melissa Blasius, ABC 15, Arizona.
Melissa, thank you. We reached out to AHDS about licensing rules and discipline. A spokesperson said they'd provide a document with a summary last month. Still haven't received it. Former midwife Sarah Kankowitz, we do have an update, has declined to speak to ABC 15 on the advice of her lawyer. A midwife faces possible revocation of her healthcare license after the state health department repeatedly cited her and fined her for violating midwife regulations. In one home birth case last December, both mom and baby died after having to be rushed over to the hospital. The widower now going public with his tragedy, and he's sitting down one-on-one with ABC 15 investigator Melissa Blasius, pushing for accountability.
28-year-old Jordan Terry, an ER nurse in Safford, was expecting her 3rd baby last year. Already mom to a boy and a girl, this child was to be the tiebreaker.
We'd be like, don't look at the ultrasound. Don't look at the ultrasound. We'd have to close our eyes, and I'd try to peek and she'd get mad at me, and I'd get mad at her because she was trying to peek, and so it was fun.
Jordan wanted to become a midwife herself to better serve her rural community. So this time she and her husband Parker hired a licensed professional midwife to assist in a home birth. Their baby's due date, December 2023.
We had this vision where birthing pool in the living room underneath the Christmas tree with the stockings around.
Their midwife, Sarah Kankowitz, posted on her business Facebook page that she specialized in VBACs, that's vaginal birth after cesarean section. Medical professionals say VBACs can be higher risk, in part due to the potential of uterine rupture. But Jordan and Parker agreed to move forward after talking to Kankowitz.
And she gave me all the right answers. She gave me exactly what I wanted to hear. And her plan of action was that she's there to look for red flags. She's there to protect and watch out for the safety of the mom and baby.
Parker did not know before his wife's due date that Kankowitz had been investigated by the state health department multiple times during her 4 years as a midwife. Regulators finding deficiencies, failing to follow state midwifery rules during 2 prior births. And she's repeatedly faced civil penalties, fined 5 times for not submitting required midwife reports detailing the care she provided to clients. Jordan went into labor at home on December 17th. Parker remembers after the midwife had arrived how Jordan started to lose color in her face and then lost consciousness.
And that was actually her last coherent words was call them. And Sarah clarified, call the ambulance, ? And Jordan said, yeah.
Instead of celebrating the birth of their tiebreaker baby, Mac, Parker held his stillborn son for a few minutes. Jordan was airlifted to a different hospital, but also died of a uterine rupture.
The safety and the health of mom and baby is the most important thing. Like I said, I wish I knew then what I know now, but hindsight's 20/20 and it just kills me.
What does accountability look like to you?
Ownership.
After reviewing the circumstances of Jordan's and Mac's deaths, the state issued a notice of intent to revoke Sarah Kankowitz's license, saying in violation of Arizona code, the licensee did not immediately alert emergency medical services once the client began to visibly decline, did not check vitals for client and fetus as required, did not monitor dilation as required, and provided services to a client who had a previous cesarean section with complications, adding, accepting a client with these risk factors for a home birth increases the risk of complications and can contribute to avoidable maternal and fetal demise. Kankowitz is scheduled to meet with the state health department for an informal settlement conference on Wednesday. Parker awaiting the results to hear if state regulators will revoke her license.
And at the end, it's just kind of a slap on the wrist, but here I am with no wife and losing a newborn child.
Parker Terry says after posting his story on social media, he received an outpouring of support, including from some other midwives. And he says now they're discussing how they can together advocate for stronger regulations on midwifery right here in Arizona. It's something that we will be reporting more on in depth in the coming weeks. ABC 15 also reached out to that midwife, Sarah Kankowitz, by phone. She said she had no comment about what happened on advice of her lawyer. I'm investigator Melissa Blasius, ABC 15, Arizona.
6 months after an Arizona mom and baby both died from complications during a home birth gone wrong, the midwife had surrendered her license.
And the death of Jordan and Mac Terry was the third case in less than 3 years where state regulators said this midwife failed to meet state safety standards while providing care to a woman in labor.
ABC 15 senior investigator Melissa Blasius questions the ability of the state to provide proper oversight, asking why it took so long to act.
What made you fall in love with Jordan?
Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me cry already. Just how much of an open book she was. I mean, immediately we talked about everything.
Like plans for a growing family. Last year, Parker Terry's wife Jordan got pregnant with her third baby. Instead of giving birth at the Safford, Arizona hospital where she worked as a nurse, Jordan wanted to be at home.
Birthing pool in the living room underneath the Christmas tree with the stockings around. But also she wanted to be a midwife herself.
She was such a great mother. She was just wonderful.
Jordan's mom explained in rural Graham County where they live, there are few options.
Not many midwives come here. And also Sarah had done a lot of successful deliveries of Jordan's friends.
That's Sarah Kankowitz, who was at the time an Arizona licensed certified professional midwife.
When you say that you're licensed, it means that you're a professional and that you can handle a situation, and especially meeting with her and her reassuring me after millions of questions that she had an emergency plan laid out. It put me at ease.
Kankowitz advertised on social media that she specialized in VBACs, vaginal birth after cesarean, as well as breech babies at home. Both have risks of serious complications. For the VBAC,
if there's an old scar there, that can be a point of weakness where it ruptures. The baby comes out, spills out, and there's a lot of bleeding.
It's like minutes.
Yes, it's very serious. As soon as it happens, the clock is ticking.
the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists says VBACs should take place at a hospital. But Arizona state regulations allow licensed midwives to supervise VBACs at home. When Jordan went into labor on December 17th,
I noticed that Jordan was losing color in her face.
Parker looked to the midwife.
We hired her to watch for the red flags, and when I called it out, all she said is she's doing okay.
But Jordan ended up losing consciousness. Then she stopped breathing.
Our trauma and our medical codes all come in here.
She was rushed to Mount Graham Regional Medical Center, where Jordan's work friends said it was a worst-case scenario.
A young mother, losing pulses, dying in front of you. When you add on to someone you know, it just amplifies it that much more.
Jordan died from a uterine rupture. Her baby Mac was stillborn. Parker has this picture to remember his son.
Hindsight's 20/20, and it just kills me.
What does accountability look like to you?
Ownership for the person, but consequence for your actions.
It wasn't until after Jordan and Mac died that the family learned that the Arizona Department of Health Services, ADHS, which had licensed midwife Sarah Kankowitz for 4 years, had already issued 2 statements of deficiencies, citing her for failing to follow state safety and health regulations, plus 5 civil penalties. Those are fines for failing to turn in required midwife reports on time. Those reports include detailed information on each patient.
I do wonder who looks at those reports. And I wonder why it took so long for this to come about. Maybe this would have been prevented.
Licensed midwife Wendy Kleckner also questions whether anyone with midwifery credentials is involved in ADHS oversight.
You have a state department that's full of people that don't actually do the profession, right? They work for the state, and they know how to go through and read things and check boxes, but to actually know what we do and how that affects people is lacking.
After Jordan and Mac's deaths, Kleckner and other midwives sent this letter to Kankowitz. It says, due to serious concerns about compliance with our scope of practice, they're urging her to discontinue practicing midwifery in any capacity.
Why did the midwives take it on themselves to send this letter versus the state health department, which actually licenses her?
Again, we don't feel like the state was doing things fast enough, effectively.
As ABC 15 dug deeper last month, we found ADHS's licensing website for the public, azcarecheck.com, was inaccurate and not up to date. It listed a civil penalty from 2022, which DHS now admits never happened, and it failed to list a notice of intent to suspend Kankowitz's license from 4 months prior in January, and this notice of intent to revoke from April. It said, in violation of Arizona code, that Kankowitz did not immediately alert emergency medical services once the client began to visibly decline, did not check vitals for client and fetus, did not monitor whether dilation occurred, and should not have provided services to a client who had a previous cesarean section with complications.
That's why it came public, is to raise awareness to this situation, but also this midwife, Sarah, but also to the state, because there's holes.
The system making things harder for patients to navigate because Arizona has 2 classes of midwives. Nurse midwives, which have advanced medical degrees and are licensed under the state nursing board. They can use more medications and medical interventions than midwives licensed through ADHS like Kankowitz, who can practice as long as they have a high school diploma, pass a written knowledge test, and complete an apprentice-type program and portfolio review by a third-party certification group.
Is it an issue with laxity in the rules?
I absolutely don't think it's a laxity in the rules. I think it's all about oversight.
The state health department repeatedly refused to sit down with us to discuss the case or talk about their regulatory review process. Sarah Kankowitz declined to speak to ABC 15, though as part of a settlement agreement with ADHS, she agreed to surrender her license. She cannot provide midwifery services in Arizona, can't post on social media or advertising to suggest she practices midwifery, and can't guide or mentor midwifery students for the next 15 years. Parker tells me he feels better knowing this midwife can no longer practice, but nothing can undo his tremendous loss.
This isn't just business and profit. This is lives, not just mom and baby, but husband and siblings and everything. This is my world that's been destroyed.
Melissa Blasius, ABC 15, Arizona.